But I really don't have any regrets. I really don't. I've lived exactly how I've wanted to. I've tried my hardest every single time. I didn't win the matches that maybe I should have always won, but I really gave it my all. So that for me is enough.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Body Serve. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm James.
This episode is a little bit different for us because we're recording in separate locations. You had to go home to Rochester for the weekend, and so we hope that the audio quality doesn't suffer too much.
Yep, I'm calling in from Rochester. I'm here for a family party. We are Zooming, and I set the mixer up for you. Yeah, we're very lucky because normally we can record in the same house at the same table using the same mic. So we've done it before, but it's unusual.
We are at the end of Wimbledon. We have two champions. One we are happy with, one we wish was a different result based on who we were firmly supporting in that final.
Yeah. So let's start by, I'll start by saying I was completely wrong about the outcome of the men's final. I really thought that Djokovic had no competition at Wimbledon. I expected number, 5 in a row was going to be coming without much fight, but here we are.
Carlos Alcaraz, who had barely played on grass before this season, he won the lead-up in Queens. Early in that tournament, he said he didn't have a chance in hell of winning that tournament. Then he went on to win that, and then he converts into Wimbledon champion like it's nothing almost.
Yeah, there's something about being young and extremely talented where you can start on the surface where you're not entirely comfortable, but you know what you can do, you're improvisational, you're creative, and I don't know, what gives you the audacity to say, I can beat Djokovic at what is basically his home turf at this point?
Well, after the match, he said that he didn't necessarily believe that he could, but no, he does. Clearly, after having done it.
Because he did, yeah. It took 4 hours and 42 minutes. There were so many times in the match where it was like, well, this feels over in favor of Djokovic, right? So Djokovic wins the first set 6-1. We get to a tiebreak, and he had won 15 tiebreaks in a row at major tournaments, which is a record. Carlos winning that tiebreak was massive. That was a huge momentum shift. But again, in the fourth set, he goes down a break early and loses the fourth set. And again, I felt like, well, then we both said this, I guess that was a good fight, but the match is lost.
At key moments in this match, there were a couple uncharacteristic errors from Djokovic, especially on the backhand side. So that definitely helped Carlos.
Yes.
There was also a 27-minute game on Djokovic's serve, which he lost.
Oh my God.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before in a match of such high stakes. And still, after Djokovic lost that game, he goes on to lose the third set. He's down 2-1. You still expect Djokovic to be Djokovic. And somehow turn that, what would normally be a soul-crushing moment for most regular players, losing a 27-minute game on serve, somehow have that be later on in the match a detriment to Carlos having won that game.
Right. As I was watching it, it was like, okay, well, first of all, what's going on? Novak so frequently gets easy points on his serve on grass. He hit double-digit serves against Hurkacz. Carlos's returning was really impressive in this match. And it felt like, if you wear Carlos down enough, is he going to suffer physically again like he did at Roland Garros? That didn't really seem to be a huge concern to Carlos this time. Maybe it was internally. I was thinking about it because I felt like who can manage a 5-set match better than Djokovic? More than anyone in history, right? Like, he knows how to do this thing. He knows how to win the important points. So I felt like the longer this set goes on, Carlos is the one who's going to be at the disadvantage.
For me, what set Carlos apart from all the other challengers who have tried to do this to Djokovic on all surfaces is his return game. To be able to return like that at 20 years old, Andrei Rublev, for one, could take note. Instead of taking full cuts on both wings on return, you get the ball back in play. And Carlos does that in part because he knows that Djokovic can't really hit through him on the baseline. He can chase everything down and get balls back from impossible positions, like Djokovic himself does, and then get back to neutral points in the rally fairly easily. It was, in a lot of ways, watching Djokovic play another version of himself in this match.
Right. To me, it was amazing that Carlos won the second set tiebreak, because if he hadn't, I don't think we'd be here talking about Carlos's first Wimbledon title. I feel like we'd be talking about Djokovic's 8th Wimbledon.
Well, yeah, that was clearly a very important part of the match. And that said, at the French Open in that semi-final, it was 1-all before Carlos's body betrayed him, right? So It's not that Carlos hadn't found himself in this position in a slam match against Djokovic. It's just that this is on a surface that should clearly favor Novak. That should have been the deciding factor in this match. And that Carlos made that not a factor in the end was really impressive.
I think, like Carlos's previous matches against Medvedev, it's not a great matchup for Daniil, but Carlos handled his serve pretty well. Like, it was a pretty straightforward straight sets match. Against Novak, Novak hits only 2 aces in almost a 5-hour match. That is really surprising and not great for him. He has been so good at hitting second serves at Wimbledon over the years. Like, several people have talked about how he was able to change his second serve into more of a harder slicing serve, which is unusual for second serves. It wasn't like a kick serve. It was something that came at you pretty hard and wasn't just to start the point. The way that Carlos was able to handle that is really like what made the difference here, I think.
As it turned out, the real turning point, the final turning point in the match was at the start of that 5th set, when Djokovic was pressing, looked to have Carlos on the back foot, and could so easily have gone up 3-love in that 5th set. Instead, Carlos held his nerve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Carlos then broke Novak's serve to go up 2-1. Novak smashed his racket into the net post, and he's been fine for it since. At that time I wasn't watching a broadcast, so I don't know what the conversation was about that. Were you watching at that time?
On air?
Yeah.
I mean, they showed it over and over and over again, but there wasn't a condemnation of it necessarily. Okay. It was just the usual, he's really upset, he's really frustrated.
Yeah.
This after Novak showed, to my mind, just not very nice behavior toward the crowd, again in this match. Essentially silencing them. He's been doing this thing with the crowd where if he feels that somebody or a group of people are not in his corner or not being supportive or I guess being boisterous against him or uncouth, he then uses that to motivate himself and then does kiss-offs and silent, it's just weird. So that happened. Oh,
see, I saw that whole kiss-off thing to someone in the crowd who apparently was heckling him. Dude, you're a grown man. You're 36 years old. What is this? Are you Nick Kyrgios? But that was actually surprising to me, and it was in keeping with this shift this week. The man journalists. Let me be specific. The men journalists. Oh, they loved it. Him finally being honest about his competition and embracing this villain role. Dude, shut up. And there's one in particular I'm talking about who's usually very on the fence about everything.
Oh, wow. We're not in the same location, so you can't whisper it or mime it to me for me to know. Maybe you can send it in the Zoom chat.
No, but, he made this comment about how, he's the best and people want to beat him, but he said they all want the scalp. And, okay, English is not your first language, but American journalists saying, that's great, I love that. Are you serious? You didn't clock the scalp comment? That's not cool. Not in American English.
I mean, it's still rampant in sport discourse and sport coverage in North America. I mean, I've tried to talk about that over the years, and There's literally been zero dent made into it. Nobody cares about that.
No traction whatsoever. No, that's just considered sports talk at this point. But I'm just saying, like, they love now he's leaned into this villain character, supposedly. But then after the match, all of the outlets are like, oh, talking about his kids and how much they idolize him. Like, can you all just chill? Maybe get off it a little bit? Maybe that's just me.
That final game, Carlos, he decides to hit a drop shot very early in that first point, serving for the championship, and he nets it. And you're thinking, well, I should speak for myself. I'm thinking, why? Why are you doing this? And what does he do? The very next point, he hits another drop shot, brings Novak into the net, and then lobs him with a perfect topspin forehand lob.
Yeah, my God, that drop shot lob combo really sealed it.
It's something he's been using the entire tournament. Nobody is doing that like he is.
And it's such a classic combination. At all levels of tennis, players are doing this. But it's much more difficult to do that to Novak Djokovic.
He did it to Daniil Medvedev at will. He literally toyed with Medvedev in that semifinal. Mm-hmm. It was a 3-3 and 3 the scoreline, but it was much easier than that.
Yeah. I was just amazed that he was able to serve it out on his first attempt, win on his very first match point, because he knows what he's up against, right? Everyone watching knows that if Djokovic gets an inch, he'll take a mile. Like, he has the ability to turn this match on its head even when he's down, which he did in 2019, of course, against Federer. And I was just amazed at, you think about like the pressure coming at you if you're Carlos, and he was just able to just figure it out.
Going back to that racket smash of the net post, right after that, we see Novak wringing his wrist. Yes. And it's like, well, here we go.
So I saw people on Twitter saying, oh, did he just injure himself based on the tantrum? I don't know if that was a factor, but you can't get treatment if you did it yourself.
On the changeover, and then while he was playing that first game afterward, he was shaking out the wrist, and at that point you're wondering, like, okay, is this self-inflicted here? Like, is this something that's a serious injury that he's done? How stupid is this, that you could jeopardize this match and potentially the rest of your season for this one moment of just abhorrent behavior?
Yeah.
But then the real tell, he then was able to close out his next service game with easy 120 plus mile an hour serves. So then I really don't think the match was affected by that. He did take a lot of uncharacteristic falls on court during this match. I don't think I've ever seen Novak fall on court that much.
Yeah, there were a lot of slips. I was really surprised.
With the win, Carlos wins his second slam, his 12th overall title, and he retains his number one ranking, because this was also up for grabs in this match. Had Novak won, he would have been the number one player in the world. During this match, Patrick McEnroe went to great lengths to tell us just how easily Novak would be number one had it not been for the ban on rankings from last year's Wimbledon. And then also if he had been able to play in Australia and the Sunshine Double. It was really, and it was a testament to how entertaining this match was, that I was listening to a call with both McEnroe brothers, and I was able to get through it without being too annoyed.
Yeah, so I was driving for part of the match, so I was listening to Wimbledon radio. I know Jill Krabis was on the call, and I don't know who the other guys were. Then I came back, I got to the US and turned on ESPN. I had the volume low, so I did not hear the commentary. I heard that the McEnroes were like fully in the tank for Djokovic.
I don't know if that would have been... I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I really... Maybe I've just become so skilled at blocking them out that maybe they did and I just didn't pick it up. But they... Maybe you're referring to this stat that IBM did apparently at the start of the match, saying that Carlos had a 55% chance of winning as opposed to Djokovic, who was at like 45.
Really?
Something along those lines. And the McEnroe brothers, and I believe it was Fowler, they were all kikiing about how, do they know something we don't know? Like, this is crazy, you got to get your head checked, kind of thing. And then lo and behold,
yeah.
And then the guy from IBM tweets at them after the match, and here comes Patrick eating crow.
I would have put Novak as the favorite as well. Like, clearly I would have been wrong. But Novak has won. He won the first 2 slams of the year. Carlos won a bunch of everything else, pretty much. He's the U.S. Open champion. He's earned that number 1 ranking. The Wimbledon points have since been corrected. And the fact that Novak didn't play the Sunshine Double is fully up to him. So we need to stop that discourse completely.
Also, Carlos did not play Australia. So at this point...
Right.
With Carlos,
2,000 points left on the table,
with Carlos,
just like the Sunshine Double.
With Carlos winning Wimbledon, being 1-set-all, looking to be in the ascendancy at the French Open, and then his body giving out, you could now make the case, a futile case, but you could now make the argument that Carlos could have gone on to win that match. And then what would have happened if Carlos won in Australia? So I think this runaway narrative that Djokovic is by and far the number 1 player in the world despite the rankings, that took a big hit at this tournament, just with this one match.
Yes. Right, because it was such an unlikely win. Right. Carlos did this. He didn't do it at the U.S. Open, where Novak is more vulnerable. He did it at the place that Djokovic owns.
So no number 1, doesn't tie Federer for most Wimbledon titles with 8.
Oh, the All England Club breathed a sigh of relief there, for better or worse. Now, what I'm not entirely sure about is, of course, a lot of journalists are jumping to this is the historic changing of the guard. This tournament will be seen as that, and perhaps even further, that Carlos winning this will signal to the rest of the field that they have a chance against Djokovic. Because recently, essentially nobody has had a chance.
It certainly does not signal that. Because none of these other men are even remotely in the same class as Alcaraz.
No, they're not close.
We saw the same performance again from Jannik Sinner. The same ineptitude in the big moment. I will, again, caution myself that he's still only 21, right? He has lots of time to develop into something, but as it currently stands, these guys, set aside all the physical things you need to do on a tennis court to hang with a Djokovic or an Alcaraz at this point. Nadal, even though he's not playing, he's still an active player. Those are the 3 best players in men's tennis, right? They don't have the mental part. Mile. They don't even have, they're not up to that level with the physical stuff and the tactical stuff. And then on top of that, they don't have the mental stuff. So there's still a lot of work for them to do. We've been hearing this argument about, does this then give them belief? Does this result signal to somebody else that they can do it? Eventually, it's going to happen in some way, but I don't see how this would be different than any other result in the last 3 to 4 years. It certainly wasn't the case for the Dominic Thiem generation.
Right.
That guy still hasn't won a slam. All these other guys that precede this current crop of young guys, they haven't done it. Like, this is a years-long debate. So I don't see why this should be any different. The only person who I would not group into that same class of player so far is Holger, because like Carlos, he's shown an insatiable appetite to get to the next level.
Yes, I mean, Medvedev is set apart from that generation because he did beat Djokovic at the US Open, ran through him in straight sets, denied him the calendar year Grand Slam. Like, he's somebody who has done it, right, on a big stage. Holger is more potential than results. Like, he's made it to the late stages in slams at a very young age. These are amazing results. He just needs to get his body up, right? Like, and the same thing with Sinner. Like, I don't think, you're not saying it's a never.
No,
it's
not,
just
not
a
saying
not.
it's a
It's
never.
just a not now, right? Like to say that this group is going to be the next top three. Like I don't want to say big three. I would like top three. Maybe not. But we've heard this about many players over the decades, right? Yannick may be that person, but he's just not that person right now.
Medvedev, the caveat with him is that he's a hard court player. He's made improvements on clay and grass, clearly. He made the semifinals at Wimbledon, but he still has great limitations on those surfaces.
Yes.
And tactically, he is way too stubborn to take a next step on those surfaces based on what he showed at Wimbledon, because that was crazy. Like, you're going to wait over 2 sets to try and finally make an adjustment, which he did, to his credit, against Eubanks, and it wasn't too late. But against somebody like Carlos, it just was never going to happen.
Yeah. And at some point for players, like the tactical choices are also technical. We can watch at home and say, oh, he needs to start returning from a nearer to the service line, but that is easier said than done. Like, his technical game just may not be up to making those tactical choices.
Right, but he did it against Chris. He showed that he could do it, which is why I feel like he's just stubborn. Let's talk about some of the other results on the men's side. I mentioned that Carlos took care of Medvedev in straight sets in the semifinal, and then Djokovic took care of Sinner. Not quite as easily, but fairly easily as well.
Right.
And then in the quarters going a round prior, the results were Djokovic taking out Rublev in 4 sets.
And that was actually a good match. Like, Andre played very well, but still wasn't close to knocking out Djokovic.
He played well for a set.
Was that your... I mean, that was my experience with it. I thought he played a really good match, but still he was so far.
I thought he played well for a set.
Okay.
He played an impeccable first set, but unable to make the necessary adjustments. Like, every single time we got the loud "Bwah!" it was into the net. You know?
Yeah.
One of the things that stuck out to me from watching that match is that he really needs to figure out how to return better. Like, it's just not going to cut it against somebody like Novak, especially on grass.
Right. And the thing is, like, returning better doesn't necessarily mean returning harder, because Carlos did a lot of, let's get the ball into play, let's chip the ball back. It does not have to be a return winner every time, right? Like, you just need to be in the point.
Sinner took out Safulin in 4 sets. Carlos beat Holger in 3 sets. And to my mind, the 7-6, 6-4, 6-4 scoreline, it felt a wider gap between the two than that. Carlos was never really challenged on serve, which was also one of the revelations about him at this tournament. His serving numbers were crazy good.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final one, Medvedev coming back from 2-1 down against Chris Eubanks to win 6-1 in the 5th. Now this one, Chris loses the first set, fairly comfortably, and he comes back and wins the second 6-1. Is up for the majority of the second set, comfortably winning it 6-4. But then at the start of the 4th set, you see Medvedev starting to make adjustments, and those adjustments are causing a lot of trouble for Chris on his service games. All of a sudden, holding serve is a much more fraught thing for him. And you kind of feel this building and building throughout the 4th set, to the point where if Chris doesn't win this 4th set, you feel like what happened in the 5th set was what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, an incredible run for Chris Eubanks. He's now a top 35 player. Huge payday. To think that he was outside the top 100 before Miami, and now he's a seeded player at Slams. That is quite the run. And it just shows you what can happen with a string of 2 to 3 good results, right, at the right tournaments.
Yeah. I mean, this is like life-changing stuff for a player who was at Chris's level before, who's played on the Challenger circuit for years at this point. The money is life-changing, the ranking, being able to get into tournaments, but also just to know that you can compete with these top players. And Medvedev is an excellent 5-set player, obviously. Luckily, he had 5 sets to figure Eubanks out.
I mean, it also wasn't a very long match. It wasn't a physically grueling match. Chris just ran out of gas in that toward the end of that fourth set and then into the fifth.
Yeah, it's been a long 3 weeks for Chris, right? He came in winning a title right before Wimbledon and then just ran through his first, 4 matches?
Beating Nori as well as Tsitsipas.
Yeah.
On the women's side.
Yeah, I suppose we do have to talk about this, don't we? This was the women's tournament was exciting. The semis were exciting. It was just an all-around smashing success of a tournament. And Saturday, just felt really deflating.
Marketa Vondrousova is your Wimbledon champion. Prior to this year, she was, 2-10 on grass? Like, this was not a surface that she had any success on, really, before this season.
No, I think she had 1 match win at Wimbledon before this year. She won 2 matches at Berlin this year. So she had 4 total main draw matches on grass, victories, before this tournament.
I saw her beat Bianca Andreescu in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
She had that win. And Jule Niemeyer.
Yes, who took out on Jabeur in the first round.
So I guess the signs were there a little bit.
And also maybe the matchup signs. She had beaten Ons at the Australian Open and Indian Wells this year. So 2 big tournaments, not just anywhere.
This woman's draw, of the quarterfinalists, 4 of them were the top 4 players in the world by ranking. You had Swiatek, you had Pegula, you had Rybakina, and you had Sabalenka. And then, on top of that, you had Madison Keys, Ons Jabeur, not one of the top 4 ranked players in the world, last year's finalist. She was there again. You had Vondrousova, and then you also had Elina Svitolina. So this quarterfinal lineup was stacked.
Yeah, just like Roland Garros, the women's quarterfinals were fantastic. Like, the lineup was really stacked. And just to say off the bat, like, we were both really, really disappointed that Ons couldn't do this, but Marketa is not a nobody, right? And at the time I was feeling very sour about the result, but Marketa is a former runner-up at Roland Garros. She's a silver medalist at the Olympics. She's been here before. To say that she's a shock major champion is not entirely correct. Maybe you're shocked that she won Wimbledon, but she has been on this stage before.
And her career could be more accomplished by now had she not suffered those injuries.
Yes, absolutely.
She just turned 24 years old. She's somebody who has a high tennis pedigree. You may just not like her or her game, but this is somebody who...
Which is your prerogative.
This is somebody who was pegged to be a top player, especially after she made that run to the French Open final.
Yeah. And I guess, so getting into the final, Marketa, her game is deceptive because you might be watching it and are thinking like, well, what is she even doing, right? It feels like she's relying on Jabeur just being bad. And it's really not the case. Like, that lefty serve out wide, she was consistent on serve. She hits very flat. She defends incredibly well. She's forcing you, if you're nervous, she's forcing you to hit an extra 1, 2, 3 balls per rally, and she's defending deep. It must be an incredibly frustrating game to play. And then you look up and the fans are probably like, what the hell are you doing? Like, this girl isn't doing anything. But it is a really tricky game to play against.
She might not be out here blasting winners all over the court, but she's hitting a very heavy ball.
Yeah, she does hit hard. You just may not be able to see it on TV.
You said that, you might not be giving Marketa enough credit if you're watching that match, and that it's not just Ons hitting a bunch of errors or playing badly. But in fact, it was probably a perfect storm of the both.
It was.
And the relationship between the two, it's strong. But
it's dialectical.
But Ons played a poor final. Like, there's no way to get around that. And I think that was part of her great disappointment at the end, because the match was there for her. right? She started quickly, was up 2-love, was up a break, lost the break, got it back, was up 4-2. And from being in a position of being up a break 4-2 in a slam final to then just immediately capitulate was crazy to me. Because again, like you said, it didn't look like Marketa was doing the most, right? To effect this turnaround from Ons. It just like something switched in her whereby her body language in particular just was atrocious. Like,
no, that's it. Like, we were watching and you could literally see it. And I think many people probably looked at each other and said, what the hell is going on? Because she goes up 2-love. She had points for 3-love, didn't get there. But then she breaks again for 4-2. And I'm thinking, wow, it doesn't seem like she's super nervous coming into this final. Maybe she's cracked the code. And it felt like as soon as she was broken to be up 4-3, everything was gone.
Still with the lead.
Everything. She still had a lead, right? Or they were on serve, but it was 4-3 ons. Everything fell apart, and you could actually see it in her body, in her face. It was so perplexing and so frustrating to watch as a fan, because I just felt like if she doesn't, best of 3 sets is so fast. Like, if you don't get this together soon, it's going to be over.
Especially on grass. It goes like that in the blink of an eye.
And so if you're feeling shitty about yourself, or if you're feeling nervous or panicked, this is not somebody you want to play. Right? Vondrousova is not somebody you want to see across the net. Because her game doesn't rely on flash, and it doesn't rely on huge risks. She just decided to play well, and that's what she did. And I think now that we have a few days distance, I really, really don't want to take away from Marketa, because in the moment I was thinking, wow, Ons is just bad. And that's the only thing that's going on here. But it was both.
Right, because look at the players that she beat at this tournament.
Yeah, see, this is why. So a lot of people I respect, said, at this point I don't see it for Ons. I don't think she's ever going to do it. I'm like, well, how can you say you didn't think she was going to beat Sabalenka here? You didn't think she was going to beat the defending champion? Like, why would you say it's impossible looking at the run she had out of nowhere?
Are we talking about two different things? I'm talking about Marketa's run.
Oh, we are talking about two different things.
Vondrousova beat Jabeur in the final. She took out Svitolina easily in the semi. In the quarterfinal, she was up against it. Down 4-2 against Pegula in the third set. Came back to win 6-4. She took out Boskova in 3 sets. Donna Vekic, who was one of the big dark horse picks to win this tournament, she took her out in straight sets in the third round. Veronika Kudermetova in the second round. And then Peyton Stearns, who's been playing well this year, in the first round. So as far as trying to paint Vondrousova's run as one of these, here comes another WTA player to vulture a slam to get one that they didn't have to beat anybody, Like, surely her run was not akin to what Ons did at this tournament, had Ons gone on to win the title.
Right.
It's not what Svitolina did at this tournament. At one point, when Svitolina beat Iga Swiatek, she became the first person the third person ever, and the first in however many years to beat 4 slam champions in one tournament.
Mm.
And then the very next day, Ons joins her.
This is no cupcake draw. Like, I'll give you that, definitely. You beat the number 4 player. You beat last year's runner-up and the runner-up at the U.S. Open. We talked at the beginning and at the midpoint that the bottom half was just incredibly stacked. It was really difficult. And Ons had to, the draw did not fall apart. She had to play those great players.
At the same time, as Pam Shriver pointed out on air, yes, there was a lopsided, top to bottom half draw, comparison. But the top half was the half that had to deal with the rain delays more than the bottom half.
Yes.
So Vondrousova was out here waiting around to play matches day after day after day, having to play, back-to-back days where some of the folks on the bottom half, especially the top-ranked players, didn't have to.
Yeah, I appreciated that insight because I think, watching from home, it's easy to forget that stuff, just because there's so much tennis going on. Back to my confusion earlier was that after this final, people were feeling very down about Jabeur and said there's, I really don't see it for her. I don't think she's ever going to do it at this point. And it's so disappointing how quickly people turn. And they were saying, well, at this stage of women's tennis, somebody's just, there's several people who are just going to snatch it from her. Like, well, but she played most of those people and they didn't do it. She beat Rybakina, the defending champion. She beat Sabalenka from a set down. Sabalenka, she was in a position to win. Again, similar to Roland Garros semifinal. But I don't know how you can look atOns's run here, given a terrible grass lead-up season, and say that she's never going to do it.
Well, the context is, for the majority of the early parts of her career, that was her biggest obstacle. Her lack of mental strength. Right? Like, she was known to collapse time and again. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's been working with a mental coach. It's something she's actively been working on. And it's still there, clearly, to some degree. But at the same time, if you're a glass half full kind of person, she's able to win a lot of those matches now where she wouldn't have previously. Which is what she said happened against Sabalenka. She said, old aunts would not have won that match. And so, what is it at play that brings this about? And the easy answer is that she's under a lot of pressure. She's not playing with the stakes that most normal tennis players are playing under in these big finals, right?
Right. And I don't want to assume what it feels like for her. I don't know the type of pressure that she feels, having broken all these barriers, and everything she's done has been a milestone for Arab women, for African women. I don't know what kind of pressure she feels like in that arena, but take all that away and you still have reached 3 Grand Slam finals and not been able to take it. So every subsequent time you go, you're going to feel that pressure even harder.
Right. People are always going to have something to say. Bottom line, who are the other players out here making 3 of the last 5 Slam finals? Who are they?
I know, right?
So,
damn, give her a break.
Her accomplishments are vast, nonetheless. Yeah. And I just knew it was going to happen after this result. The immediate comparisons to Yana Novotná. And I just really wish people would take Yana's name out their mouths.
Right, especially because she's not around anymore.
It's just rude and disrespectful also to Ons. And my saying that feels like I'm being rude and disrespectful to Yana. But they're separate people. And the trauma that Yana went through in her life and her career, that she eventually overcame, it's not, a perfect fit. It cannot be a perfect fit. These are 2 completely different people with different life experiences and different pressures. So, resist the impulse, please.
And to boil down Novotna's legacy to being a choker and then finally winning Wimbledon, she had an incredibly accomplished career in singles and doubles outside of losing 2 Wimbledon finals. Andy Murray has lost how many Grand Slam finals? Kim Clijsters lost 4 Slam finals before she won her first. This is common. Yvonne Lendl, the same way. Not to say that Ons is any of those people, just to say that the comparison is just kind of mean to both of them. Although, I know you noticed, Princess Kate definitely tried to get her Duchess of Kent moment.
Well, Ons was not going to give it to her. There was no crying on her shoulder.
No, and poor Ons, You just want to get off the court. Can you, like, she was polite, she was so nice to Kate, but do you think that Ons wants to be consoled by the Princess of the United Kingdom right now? Like, no, she just wants to go home.
Congrats to Marketa Vondrousova. Hell of an achievement. Now a top 10 tennis player. She's the 10th ranked tennis player in the world.
Yeah, came in at number 42. Again, she's had big accomplishments before. Her career has been really sidelined by injury. In that Tokyo Olympic run, where she was the runner-up, she was the one who beat Naomi in her home country.
And for Ons, I see this as still a stepping stone, a building block. That mental coach,
she hasn't been...
That mental coach needs to earn their money right now, because you need to put this into proper perspective.
Right, because she has not been in particularly great form this year.
Anything you want to say about the other quarterfinalists?
I think we talked a lot about Svitolina in our last episode, but then she went and beat the number one player in the world in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, that surprised me. As you know, and as the listeners know, I had gone fully on board the Swiatek solving grass and winning Wimbledon train. I was...
Yes, it felt like mere hours before this happened. Iga, I still agree with you that Iga is getting better and will figure out grass. I think she will be a Wimbledon champion. Just, it was not to be this time. Svitolina was obviously feeling herself, and we talked on the previous episode that her game wasn't always this aggressive, and that you felt that she was playing better than she ever had before her pregnancy.
Well, playing better, but she was hitting harder for sure.
Oh, okay.
I'd never seen as an aggressive Svitolina as I have over this run and throughout the French Open run. Like, it's a completely
definitely
player.
Not consistently. And she won that match against Iga outright. You know, she didn't wait for Iga to make mistakes. Svitolina served her spots really well. She played aggressive from the baseline, and it just felt different. Like, she actually went out there and took that match.
The other quarterfinalist I want to quickly mention here is Jessica Pegula. She now has made 6 Slam quarterfinals and has lost all of them. And this one, she was so close to getting to her first semifinal against Vondrousova in the quarters. And so you look at it in one way, and you may be tempted to class her with an Andrei Rublev, right, who's now 0-8 in Slam quarterfinals. They're the obvious comparison. But then you look at it as, well, she is one of the most consistent players on the WTA Tour. And again, is that so bad?
For her, probably yes. Like, she wants more. But, 4 years ago, did you think that Pegula was going to get to 6 Grand Slam quarterfinals?
No, I did not.
And still going?
No.
I don't think that really anybody foresaw that.
But also what you're seeing is you have this cluster of women who are consistently making deep runs at slams over and over and over again now. Ons has made 3 of 5 finals. Swiatek is the number 1 player. She's won 4 slams. She's going to be around for a while. Sabalenka is maybe the most consistent player in the WTA Tour at the slam level.
She leads the race this year.
Then you have Rybakina. You have all these players that are consistently doing well. This is the type of quarterfinal lineup that we're going to keep seeing, I think, for the foreseeable future. And I think it's only going to get better. It's going to get tougher for these women to break through. But it's exciting. For me, it's exciting.
Mm-hmm. And even Madison Keys is not particularly consistent, but she's been here a lot of times, right? She's been in the second week of slams a bunch of times now. And it was exciting to see her here again.
Now that we've wrapped the singles action at Wimbledon, run us through some of the other results. Who are the other Wimbledon champions?
In juniors, we don't always talk about juniors, but there's some exciting stuff happening. The 16-year-old DC native Clervy Ngunuwe has won her first Grand Slam singles title, this time without dropping a set. She was the doubles champion at Roland Garros with Tyra Grant, and now she's the Wimbledon girls titleist. She's coached by her dad, and I saw this quote, with the support of Mary Pierce. I feel like I missed that the first time. Did you know that?
I didn't. She also has the support of Zina Garrison as well. Zina was tweeting about it today.
Yes, I loved that. Clervy had told Zina that she looked up to Serena growing up. I mean, she's only 16, but she's not grown up. But I loved seeing Zina showing support to Clervy on Twitter. And on the boys' side, the British got their first junior titleist since 1962, Henry Searle.
In women's doubles, wow.
What a moment. What a moment.
Sue, this woman, she's just unlike anybody else in tennis.
She disappeared from the game for 18 months. Barbara Streisova, her partner, had a baby, kind of retired, and is now back. And they are now the oldest pair by their combined ages to even reach a Grand Slam final, let alone win it.
She won the French Open, not with Streisova. And so now she's won back-to-back slam doubles titles. Streisova says that this is going to be her final Wimbledon and that her final slam outing will be at the US Open next month.
Right. So Shea has won the first two legs of a Sue Slam. Can we coin that now? The Sue Slam is coming.
It may be a bit early.
Right, but, it is theoretically a possibility. She has now won the women's doubles title in her most recent 3 appearances at the tournament. That's a big deal. Yeah, and this is also their second Wimbledon title as a pair.
It's Streetsova's second slam title in doubles, and it's Shea's 6th.
So Shea is not worried about it, and she's sashaying her way into the International Tennis Hall of Fame after dropping out of the tour for almost 2 years. People didn't really know where she was, but she was just living life, traveling, and now she's back.
I look forward to seeing her back on the singles court as well.
Yes.
She almost qualified for this tournament in singles, losing in the final round of qualifying.
On the men's side, I mean.
Well, did you get it wrong?
Skupski and Kulov won the men's doubles title. I actually didn't write this down, but I felt like we should probably mention it.
I have nothing more to add on that. No disrespect to those men, but...
Both guys have been around men's doubles for a long time, but it is the first major title for both of them. Naomi Osaka. This doesn't have anything to do with Wimbledon, but Naomi Osaka is a mom. She and Corday welcomed their baby Shai. This was announced by Corday in concert at the Calgary Stampede in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I guess it took a few days for that news to reach tennis Twitter. I guess not a lot of folks are at Corday concerts in Calgary on tennis Twitter. And it was unclear if it was like real, if it was, fact-checked news or whatever. But yeah, he's the dad. He would know. Naomi gave birth last week. And it's only a week after Ash Barty had her baby, Hayden.
It's crazy how you can talk about Naomi Osaka in this context without referring to Corday as her rapper boyfriend. It can be done.
Right?
It can
be done. Yeah. And I didn't use any of the racist trappings of baby daddy or any of those things.
Naomi says that she's so eager to get back to tennis.
He tweeted, now back to regularly scheduled programming.
For a while, folks were unclear about what the name of the baby was. And so her tweet saying, well, this was a cute little intermission or something like that with a picture of the baby. Some folks were like, is the baby's name Intermission?
Guys, please.
Let's be serious here.
Jennifer, do you prefer Jenny? Brady? She's coming back to tennis, finally.
She's back. It happened already.
She's in Granby, Quebec.
Well,
tell me. I don't know.
She won tonight in straight sets.
Awesome. She's been gone so long, I feel like a lot of the young people probably don't even know who she is. But her announcement video was so funny. Like, this woman is actually really funny in a dry way. She announced that she's here in Granby, she's playing, and also I'd like to announce my new sponsorship, Flex Seal duct tape.
It's a super wide duct tape.
It was the most random. I mean, I absolutely love it. Like, I want to go buy Flex Seal duct tape now. That's all I gotta say. Honestly, it's challenging to do these remotely. I feel like I always get to like look at you and communicate non-verbally, you know?
Yeah, and then there's the worry about talking over each other. So I feel like we are less inclined to banter this way.
Yeah. So all that to say, I totally get what other podcasters feel, you know.
Overall, I would say this was a far more interesting Wimbledon than I expected, honestly.
Indeed. I mean, especially because Novak lost. Like, that was definitely my highlight. I absolutely loved it. And I hope to experience it many more times.
Oh my god. You can't just keep that. And there's so many things you tell me, oh, that's private, that's not fit for air, that's just between the two of us.
That was not private. I think that's pretty clear, my feelings on that man.
Right, but do you have to do all that?
I do. I really do. Because, my feelings extend to the journalists who, like, can't help themselves from, like, hagiography. Is that how you pronounce that word?
The other option is what? Hagiography?
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, you can cover a sport without being like, oh my god, like, nobody is better in defeat than Novak Djokovic. Like, he's so nice. Like, y'all, have you been asleep for the past 3 years? I mean, can we just stop?
I mean, it is a noted feature of him losing. It's something we've said before. He is often very gracious in defeat.
He is, but he damaged the net post. I mean, I hope they put in a work order. I hope he's got a hammer and nails and he was out there today on Monday, July 17th, fixing the net post. You know how they are very touchy about the court at Wimbledon. It's just like the difference between in-match Novak and post-match Novak. It's like everything is always forgotten. You know, It's like, what a great dad. Look at his kids. Like, I don't care. I really don't care. I'm sorry.
You got it all out?
I think so.
I saw today that he was fined $8,000 for unsportsmanlike conduct, so I assume it had to do with the net post.
Yes. That was it. And he was already keyed up because he had been called for a time violation. And he was almost called for another time violation later in the match, which resulted in this protracted discussion where he was booed and it was hard to even hear what they were saying. But Fergus used his discretion not to call him for a code because the next time violation would have resulted in the loss of a first serve.
And here is Nick Kyrgios out here tweeting, calling Fergus Murphy a peanut again.
Right. Previously it was a potato. I mean, if Greek yogurt is a racist saying, then potato's a racist saying by the same logic, right?
I'm not wading into that. As that match went on, though, the bouncing of the ball was crazy. And so what the issue became for Novak was, and it's the same issue that Rafa's had, that anybody who has issues with time violations now, it has to do with the discretion of the umpire and when they call the score, right? Because that's when the clock starts. Mm-hmm. And it's been compounded by, rightly, ball kids and ball people not handling player towels anymore. So they have further distances to travel to wipe themselves off before they start the next point. Like, there's more involved. So I do get that. But in this instance, the bouncing of the ball was just absurd. It was like 2010 levels of bouncing of the ball.
Yes. And Rafa complains about the same thing, about the distance he has to travel to the towel. And Novak mentioned that yesterday. But what is not monitored is the time between first and second serves. So a lot of times when you see a player is frustrated or resentful about the time violation, they'll take an hour between serve 1 and serve 2. So there's relentless ball bouncing then as well.
Anyway, We are Wimbledon out.
Yeah, we're starting the U.S. Open Series. Wow. Well, we'll see you guys in New York. We'll be there.
What, 5 weeks away?
Yeah. I need to sleep for those entire 5 weeks.
Thanks for listening to us during this Wimbledon coverage. My name is Jonathan. You can find me on Twitter at tennis_John.
And I'm James at ElliotJMR.
2 L's, 2 T's. You can find everything BodyServe related at linktree.com/thebodyserve. Thanks for listening.
Till next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.